Good morning. Welcome to the Get Licensed to Build workshop. This is a free online workshop for those who want to get their California contractor's license. Our goal this morning is to go through all the parts of the license application and to give you practical tips to help you complete it correctly. We want to give you every opportunity to demonstrate your experience and qualifications to get your California contractor's license. We will also help get ready for your licensing exams. We'll give you a link to a video that shows you exactly what to expect on your test date. Today's webcast is presented by the Contractor State License Board, the government agency responsible for regulating the California construction industry. I'm Anna Rodriguez, Enforcement Supervisor. Joining us today is Fode Garagoslo, Licensing Supervisor. Good morning, Fode.
Good morning, Anna. CSLB is overseen by a 15-member board that directs administrative policy for our operations. Our board is made up of 10 public members, including 1 labor representative, 1 local building official, and 1 representative of a statewide senior citizen organization, and 5 contractors. Appointments are made by the governor and the state legislature.
Please note, the CSLB test centers are open. They were closed from December to February due to COVID-19. Applicants will have to take safety precautions on test date. That includes wearing a mask and more, but we will go into those details a little bit later. If you are watching right now on either YouTube Live or Facebook Live and want to participate, you will need to join us on WebEx. There's a banner with a link at the homepage, www.cslb.ca.gov. That is also where you can download this presentation to follow along. The presentation file includes clickable bonus links that appear on the slides throughout this workshop. We are going to present a lot of information at you today, so don't worry if you don't get it all. We will archive this video of the workshop and put it on our YouTube channel. That way you can go back and watch it again. To ask a question, you're going to want to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the page, not the chat feature. On the bottom right of your screen, you will see the Q&A feature. Finally, we tend to get a lot of questions during these workshops on how you document your work experience and what credit you get for your education or military service. Those questions are fine, but we would ask that you wait to send us those questions until after you see that part of the workshop. Again, you can use the Q&A feature, and you want to make sure you send your questions to all panelists. We will go through your questions at the end of our presentation, which should take about 45 minutes.
The information obtained during this webcast is not nor is intended to be legal advice. While this webcast contains general information, including legal guidelines for contractor license applications, it does not contain definitive statements of the law and may not reflect the most current legal developments in the construction industry. Such guidelines communicated or discussed during the webcast are for informational purposes only. If you have questions about the application of the law for specific situations, you should contact an attorney who is familiar with California construction law or review the 2021 edition of the CSLB publication, California Contractors License Law and Reference Book. You can download it for free on CSLB website or purchase directly from the publisher LexisNexis. There are links for both at the bottom of the screen.
So here's a list of what we're going to cover today. We will take you through the process for applying for your California contractor's license. First, who needs a license? Next, why get a contractor's license? The minimum qualifications you'll need to get a license and what credits you might qualify for. The type of business entities, the different CSLB license classifications. We will also spend a lot of time giving you tips to help you fill out your application, including how to demonstrate your work experience to meet the minimum qualifications. We will also be covering fingerprint requirements for a criminal background check. We will help get you ready for the exam or the exams that you will need to pass in order to get your license. And finally, the other things you'll need to have in place before your license is issued, things like a bond and insurance.
First, today we will take a look at who needs a license. Here in California, a state contractor's license is needed for all construction projects priced at $500 or more. That total includes both labor and materials. The law doesn't let you break down a project into $499 pieces. It's the entire project. Also, you can't charge an hourly rate to get around the $500 threshold. If the hourly cost times the number of hours for the job totals $500 or more, you need a contractor's license. So what is the definition of a contractor? The definition comes from the State Business and Professions Code. In this case, it's section 7026.1. We have got a link to that code at the top of the page if you download the presentation. I have read the entire code, but I will read the entire code, but pay a special attention to the part we underline. A contractor is any person, consultant to an owner building, firm, association, organization, partnership, business trust, corporation, or company who or which undertakes, offers to undertake, proposes to have the capacity to undertake, or submit a bid to construct any building or home improvement project or part thereof. In other words, you don't have to do the work to break the law. You must have a contractor license just to advertise that you can do the construction work, or even to give a bid for a construction job if the bid totals $500 or more.
So you may be asking yourself why you should get a license. Well, here are a few good reasons. First, you can take pride in being a licensed professional. It shows that you've taken the steps to get licensed and that you are serious about your career choice. It also allows you to make valuable contributions to your local community. Unlicensed contractors must operate in the shadows and cannot help make their community a better place to live. Next, it allows you to get paid for the work that you do. There is a value to the work done by a licensed professional. Being licensed also gives you legal options if customers don't pay you. Unlicensed contractors do not have a legal right to take someone to court to get paid because the work required a license and they weren't licensed to do the work in the first place. Also, you would be able to use the mechanic lien laws. Next, you don't have to look over your shoulder with the fear of getting caught. Contracting without a valid California license can lead to misdemeanor charges. Those caught face a first offense sentence of up to 6 months in jail and/or a $5,000 fine, and potential administrative fines anywhere between $200 to $15,000. Subsequent violations can result in increased criminal penalties and fines. In addition, you may face felony charges if you contract without a license when one is required in a state or federally declared disaster area, or if you try to pass yourself off as a licensed contractor by illegally using a license number. Remember, there are no educational requirements to get a license. Also, you do not have to go to a license preparation school to get your contractor's license.
So what do you need to get your license? First, it is important to understand that CSLB does not license individuals. We license companies or businesses, also called entities. Many entities are one-person operations, but note that every entity, even a one-person operation, must have a qualifier. That's someone who has the minimum experience and is responsible for the operations of the company. Here is the short list of minimum qualifications you will need. You must be at least 18 years old. You must have either a valid Social Security number or valid individual taxpayer identification number, which is called ITIN. You can qualify the license in one of two ways. First, you can qualify the license by having at least 4 years experience within the last 10 years as a journey person, foreperson, supervising employee, or contractor in the trade being applied for. Or you can also get a qualifier for the license who has that required experience. We will spend a lot of time talking about how you can demonstrate your experience on your application in a few minutes.
It may be possible for you to substitute your education, your technical training, and your apprenticeship training for some of the required experience. We tend to get a lot of questions about this. First, CSLB cannot prejudge your experience. Due to the number of applications that we receive and we process every month, we don't have enough staff that would be needed to prejudge your experience. We can only review your documents after you have submitted your application for a license. Next, to get education credit, the coursework must be directly related to the work that you will be doing as a contractor. Your education cannot be substituted for more than 3 years or 36 months of the required experience, meaning you will need to have at least 1 year of practical experience if you get the full 36 months of education experience credit. To apply for education credit, you must provide CSLB written documentation. That means you're going to need a copy of any apprenticeship completion certificates that you may have, or get official technical school or college transcripts. Get those transcripts sent directly to you, but do not open the envelope. You want to leave it sealed and include it with your CSLB application packet. Note, high school courses will not earn you any credit towards your contractor's license.
If you are looking to get education credit to meet the 4 years or 48 months of experience, you will need to get your license. This is the most important slide of this entire workshop. This is the kind of credit you can expect to receive for your education. Note that for some areas, we are only giving you averages, or you will see that your credit will be determined on a case-by-case basis. We are not going to be able to give you any more guidance than what you see on this slide. So our best advice is do not rely on the combination of your experience and education credits to barely hit the 4-year experience mark. There is always the real possibility you will not get as much education credit as you were hoping. Let's go through the chart from the most credit you can get to the least. The most education credit you can get is for a Bachelor of Science degree in construction management. That degree will get you the full 36 months of credit. Next is a master's or bachelor's degree in business or a law degree. Any one of those will get you 24 months of credit. An associate in science degree in construction management will get you 18 months credit. A bachelor's degree in some other major will get you an average of 18 months credit. An associate degree in majors beside construction management will get you an average of 6 months credit. Credit for individual college classes are given on case-by-case basis, usually with a maximum of 6 months credit. Apprenticeship completion certificates will get you 24 to 36 months, depending on the classification of the program. For example, a sheet metal worker's apprenticeship gets you 24 months credit for the C20 or HVAC and C43 or sheet metal classifications only. A lineman apprenticeship gets you 36 months in C7 low voltage and C10 electrical classifications only. If you have transcripts for other technical training you have taken, you might be able to get some minimal credit as well. Again, don't use your education credits to try and squeak by the 4-year or 48-month requirements.
If you served in the military, some of that service might count as well. On the bottom of the page, you'll see a bonus link to our CSLB Military Application Assistance Program, where you can learn more about that information. The license qualifier also must pass 2 different exams, both taken on a computer at one of our CSLB test centers. One exam is on the California business law. The other is in the specific trade covered by the license. We also have limited specialty licenses, which we will discuss a little bit later. Those licenses only require that the qualifier take the law and business exam. As we mentioned, the qualifier is a person who must take and pass the required examinations, or they can qualify for a waiver. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the waiver. only to note that you might be able to request a waiver from taking one or both of the exams if you fall in a very specific situation. We recommend that you look at the CSLB website for more information on those specific situations. We have also included a bonus link here at the bottom of this page here. The qualifier must also undergo the criminal background check. We will go more in depth on that in just a few minutes. After the license is issued, the qualifier must be in position to exercise direct supervision and control of the company's operations. They are also responsible for all workmanship issues. It is also important to note here that if you are trying to get a B general building contractor license and you hire subcontractors to work under you, you are responsible as a project's prime contractor for the work that they do.
The next thing you are going to need to determine before applying for your license is which type of entity your business will be. There are 4 types. First is the sole ownership, where the owner or responsible managing employee may serve as the license qualifier. Just about 2/3 of the contracting businesses in California are sole ownerships. Second is a corporation, where either of the current officers designated as the responsible managing officer or the responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. Just under 1/3 of our licenses are corporations. A distant third is a partnership, where either of the general partners or responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. That's 2% of our licenses. Finally, a limited liability company or LLC, where a responsible managing member, responsible managing manager, responsible managing officer, or responsible managing employee may serve as qualifier. About 1.5% of the California construction companies are LLCs.
Now let's talk about the license classifications. A contractor's license can include multiple classifications, although you must select one when filing your application. While there are more than 40 license classifications in California, they all fall under 3 distinct categories. There is a bonus link to our classifications list at the bottom of this screen here. First is our Class A or General Engineering Contractors. These are contractors who deal with fixed works that require specialized engineering knowledge and skill. A contractors are the ones that build projects such as freeways, skyscrapers, and dams. Today, there are just about over 19,000 A contractors in the state. Next, we have our Class B or General Building Contractors. This is the largest class of contractors in California with more than 133,000. B contractors have a principal business dealing with any structure built, being built, or to be built that requires as part of its construction at least 2 unrelated building trades or crafts. In other words, a B contractor shouldn't take a prime contract for any project involving trades other than framing or carpentry unless the prime contract requires at least 2 unrelated building trades other than framing or carpentry. There is no limitation on B contractors to stop them from taking on projects that only include framing or carpentry. The final classes are C or Specialty Contractors. These licenses are for construction work that requires special skill and whose principal contracting business involves the use of a specialized building trade or craft. Examples from this class include C10 Electrical Contractors, C20 HVAC Contractors, C27 Landscaping Contractors, C36 Plumbing Contractors, C39 Roofing Contractors, C46 Contractors, and C53 Swimming Pool Contractors, just to name a few. There are also 30 limited specialty classes that fall under our C61 classification. These include the C61 D49 Tree Service Limited class. More than 209,000 contractors hold a C license in California.
Here are the two forms you will need. On the left is the license application. On the right is the certification of work experience. You can get these forms on the CSLB website. There is your bonus link on the left side of the page, so be sure to download this presentation. We will give you a closer look at the different sections of these forms a little later. Okay, now let's break down the steps of the application process. First, identify who will be the qualifier for your license. That person will be responsible for exercising direct supervision and control of the company. If you are using an RME, a responsible managing employee, as your qualifier, determine if he or she can qualify for an exam waiver. Be aware of companies you pay to connect you with a licensed qualifier. In some cases, these qualifiers are in a different part of the state and cannot exercise the direct supervision needed, or they are unwilling or maybe even don't understand their role as a qualifier. Next, make sure you complete the correct application. There are two options: application for original contractor license and application for original contractor license exam waiver 7065. We have got links to both at the bottom of the page.
The next step is determining your company name. Take a look at the application for examples. Some things you want to keep in mind. Your name cannot be misleading or imply that you qualify for a license classification other than what you're getting. For example, if you're going to apply for a C36 plumbing license, you cannot have a company name of John Smith Plumbing Construction, Heating and Drywall. Corporate and LLC names must match exactly the name that you have registered with the California Secretary of State's office. The name of everyone on your Secretary of State registration must be listed on your CSLB application. You can also use what is called a DBA, or doing business as. The main thing to remember here is that your DBA cannot be misleading as well. And you must use that name in all advertising and on all of your contracts. Next, you'll want to get together certifications to support your work experience. You should do this even if you apply for an exam waiver. Feel free to use multiple pages if necessary. Next, be sure to note if you are a military veteran. Some of your military service may be used to meet your 4 years of experience qualifications. Also, your application may be expedited through our Military Application Assistance Program. We mentioned that a few minutes ago, but here's a bonus link at the bottom of this screen here for more information on that program. To participate, you must have had an honorable discharge. Be sure to include a copy of your military DD-214 paperwork showing your honorable discharge with your application. The next couple of items are basic but important. Proofread for any missing information on your application. Make sure you have provided an answer to all necessary fields. Second, don't forget to sign and date your application. Finally, determine if you need a special accommodation to take your examination. If so, complete a request form and submit it with your application. We will talk about the use of a translator a little bit later.
Next is a closer look at our fingerprint requirements, which are used for a criminal background check. This is a list of those who must submit a full set of fingerprints to CSLB, depending on the type of business entity. All applicants, each corporate officer, each partner, each owner, the responsible managing employee, all home improvement salespersons. If you are in California, you must submit fingerprints electronically with what's called live scan. You can get an updated list of live scan locations around California broken down by county on the Attorney General's website. We have got a link here, or you can simply go to Attorney General's website and search for live scan. You will also see we have a bonus link at the bottom of the screen to the fingerprint information page on our CSLB website. If you are out of a state, it's going to be tough for you to get us your fingerprints. That's because you must submit hard copies of them, the old-fashioned way. Those take anywhere between 3 and 6 months for the FBI and Department of Justice to process. When things settle down with COVID-19, you may want to consider traveling to California to get your electronic live scan done here.
So what happens if you have any criminal convictions? CSLB may deny your license for the following reasons. First, if your conviction is substantially related to the duties, functions, and qualifications of a contractor. Also, if your conviction involves fraud or a violent crime. There are other factors CSLB also considers. They are the nature and severity of the crimes, the amount of time that has passed since the conviction, and any evidence of rehabilitation that you submit to CSLB. CSLB evaluates felony criminal convictions within 7 years of the application date. So for applications filed this year, we would look back to 2014. For misdemeanor criminal convictions, we would look back for 3 years of the application date back to 2018. That's unless the convictions are for a violent felony, certain sexual crimes, or financial crimes related to construction. CSLB denies only 1% of the total applications we receive based on criminal convictions. You'll also note the bonus link to our fingerprints information page.
Okay, along with the education credits we talked about earlier, this next section is probably the most important of the entire workshop and the part of the application that causes the most headaches for applicants. It is how you demonstrate your work experience on your application. Remember, the license qualifier needs 4 years or 48 months of experience within the past 10 years in the classification for which you're applying. That means at least 4 years of experience since 2011. The experience must be at no less than a journeyman level or as a foreman, supervising employee, contractor, or owner builder. A journeyman is defined as an experienced worker who is fully qualified as opposed to a trainee and can perform trade without supervision, or one who has completed an apprenticeship program.
There's a limited amount of space on the application to show your certified work experience, so feel free to use additional pages if needed and simply attach them at the end of the work experience form. Use as many certifications of work experience form as you need in order to prove the required 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. Use a different form for each certifier. You want to remember to be as accurate as possible. Make sure the person who is certifying your work describes the actual work that you performed and also the dates in which you performed them. We will now be providing some examples of both good and unacceptable descriptions to demonstrate your work experience. You want to keep in mind, you don't want to copy and paste this information directly into your application. These are just examples so that you get an idea of what we are looking for.
At the top of this chart is the classification and type of experience you are trying to demonstrate. This first example is journey person experience. The overall theme we will keep repeating is the more specific the description, the better. The work experience form should be completed by your certifier, someone who has knowledge and observed your work experience for the classification you're applying for. That person does not have to be a licensed contractor.
Okay, so our first example here is for the Class B General Building Contractor. The best type of description your certifier would use for journey person experience is to be very specific. Journey person experience must include hands-on work. It's something like this. Bob performed rough and finished carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. An unacceptable description would be something generic, something like this. Residential general building trades. For four-person experience, the description must include some hands-on work and/or supervisory work. Here's an example of the best type of description. Bob oversaw other staff at job site performing rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Again, something unacceptable would be something that's generic, something like this. Residential general building trades. For a supervising employee experience, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at that supervisor level. An example is something like this. As a construction lead on multiple projects, Bob supervised rough and finish carpentry, concrete forming and pours, rough out plumbing and electrical, interior exterior painting, and flooring on residential homes. Something unacceptable would be something more generic, something like this. Residential general building trades. For our out-of-state contractor experience, the description must include examples of work done that were either out of the state, military, federal land, or work for a government entity. Applicants can qualify as a journeyperson, a foreperson, or a supervising employee. But just remember, you want to be very specific about the duties and your employment circumstances. Our next example here is for a C-27 landscaping contractor. First, for the experience at a journeyman level. The best type of description your certifier would use would be something like this. Jane performed landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips, and pathways and tree pruning. An unacceptable explanation would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C-27 landscaping contractor, the best work experience description for a foreperson would be something like this. Jane oversaw other staff at job site performing landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. An unacceptable description, again, would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. For a C-27 supervising employee, the description should include an explanation of how you arrived at that supervisor level. The best type of description would be something like this. As a construction lead on multiple projects, Jane supervised landscape construction, maintenance and installation of sprinklers, ground plants, low voltage lighting, ornamental yard art, concrete mow strips and pathways, and tree pruning. Unacceptable here for the supervising employee would be something like this. Gardening, yard maintenance, planting. Finally, for those out-of-state contractors, the same guidance that we showed you for general building contractors would apply. Be sure you include examples of your out-of-state work, as well as work that was done for the military or on federal land or for a government entity. Be sure that you are specific when you describe the duties that you performed and also your employment circumstances. Now, by law, CSLB must randomly review and verify all of the information provided at least on 3% of the applications that we receive. Our next 3 slides run down the acceptable documentation that you can use to support your work experience in the event that your application was selected and you were asked to provide additional information. Now, this supporting documentation should not be mailed in with your application. You will only need to provide this information if it's requested by a CSLB staff member. On the lower right of the screen here, you're going to see a link to this publication. It's available on our website, and along with additional information on experience documentation. If you look at the chart, you can see that the first column is for documents that you can use if you were employed by a licensed contractor. The second column here is for documenting your experience if you've been self-employed. The third column is for documentation you will need if you're applying for a Class B general building contractor license and you need to use owner-builder experience to meet the experience requirements. Here's the next page of acceptable documentation. Again, there's you can click on that link there to view and print this publication from our website. Here's the final page of acceptable documentation. If you do not have this information readily available, you may want to begin to gather it now, just in case you are asked to provide it in the future. Remember, you're trying to demonstrate that you have 4 years of experience within the last 10 years. CSLB staff may contact the certifier of the work experience or other parties to verify the experience.
One other note, CSLB gets more than 1,000 applications a month, so our application processing staff has seen it all. They have got 2 pieces of advice for you. First, don't cut and paste from this presentation. Also, don't try to get around having to take a trade test by applying for multiple subcategories under the C61 limited specialty classification. Okay, that's the content you will need to fill out your application. Before getting it to CSLB, double check to make sure you did not miss anything. Be sure to sign and date it as well. And don't forget to include all the important $330 application fee. You will pay the $200 initial license fee after you pass your exam or exams. Then put your application packet in the mail to CSLB and deliver to one of our public counters. We've got a bonus link at the bottom of the screen with our office locations.
Okay, so now that we have gone through the information that you're going to need to include, now we're going to look closely at the application itself so that you can see where this information goes. So here's section 1 of our application. Here is where you list your business name. Remember, when selecting a business name, make sure that the name that you have selected is compatible with the classification and the entity that you are applying for, and that it is not misleading. If your business is a corporation or an LLC, you would need to make sure that the name that you have registered with the Secretary of State matches the information that you are going to provide here. In line number 2 is where you will indicate what classification you are applying for. The mailing address and phone number that you list here on line 3A and 3C will be made public on CSLB's website once you have received your license. In section 3, in section 2, you will select your business entity. If you are applying for a corporation or an LLC, you will need to provide your registration number provided to you by the Secretary of State. So make sure you pay extra attention to the instructions in this section pertaining to the entity for which you are applying. In section 3, you will list the qualifiers information. Remember, the qualifier is a person that meets the experience requirement and will also be responsible for the direct supervision and control of construction operations. The qualifier will be the person taking the exams. On line number 6, you will list any previous or current license numbers that you have held. You will also need to list the percentage of the new business owned by the qualifier. For example, if you're the only person that will be listed on the license, you would enter 100% on this line here. On line 7, you will need to indicate what position will be held by the qualifier. Each entity has different personnel requirements, so you will need to make sure that you have listed all positions depending on the entity that you have selected. You can find more information on this on pages 2 through 4 of our application instructions on our website. Line number 8 is where you will sign and date your application. Section 4 is where you will list the personnel information for all remaining personnel that will be listed on the license. For example, if you're applying for a corporation, you will need to indicate who will be the responsible managing officer or employee, the president, the secretary, and the treasurer. Again, more information can be found on page 4 of our application instructions. If you will have more than 4 people on your license, you can make additional copies of this page here and include it with your application. For corporations and for LLCs, you'll want to make sure that all personnel that are listed with the Secretary of State are listed in this section here. All personnel that will be listed on the license must sign the application here in Section 4. Section 5 is just a series of yes or no questions, so we're not going to go into detail on those. Section 6 here is where you may be granted credit towards your 4 years of experience based on your education. Question number 17 asks if you have completed an educational or apprenticeship program. You will need to submit official seal transcripts if you would like to be considered for this credit. If you attended formal training or an apprenticeship program, you will need to provide a certification of completion. Get the seal transcript sent to you, then include it with your application packet. Do not have the program send the transcripts directly to CSLB. You don't want to take the chance that we're not able to match them up with your application. So make sure you get them sent to you, make sure they remain sealed, and then just mail them in with your application. CSLB may grant you up to 3 years of credit based on your education. This credit is not based on a year-to-year basis, meaning just because you have a 2-year college degree, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will be granted 2 years of credit towards your experience requirement. You may qualify for this credit regardless of when you completed your education. The 10-year time frame does not apply to education. You may also apply for this credit even if your education was received outside of this country. If your degree is in any other language other than English, it has to be translated. Now we will discuss the certification of work experience. Part 1 will be filled out by you, the applicant. Here you're going to list the information for your employer where you gained your work experience. If you were self-employed when you gained that experience, please make sure you check that box right here in line number 2. If you are applying for a B general construction license and will be using experience obtained while working on your own property, make sure you mark this box here on line number 4. Part 2 will be filled out by the certifier. In this section, the certifier must include the dates in which you obtained the experience. They must also select if you were working on a part-time or a full-time basis. Keep in mind that if you were working part-time, you're only going to receive 50% of credit for that time, which means you will need to provide 8 years of experience within the last 10 years in order to meet that 4-year requirement. On line number 6, your certifier will need to list the duties that you performed or supervised that are considered critical for the classification that you are applying for. You can read a description of critical duties in CSLB's description of classification booklets available on our website. Do not copy and paste the description from the booklet. This is only to give you an idea of what CSLB considers critical duties for each classification. Your certifier should complete this section in their own words and be as complete and accurate as possible. The final part of the work experience certificate is also to be completed by your certifier. They need to list their relationship to you and provide their contact information. For example, in line number 7, there's different boxes that they can check. If they are a former employer of yours, a journeyman, if they are a contractor, and there they can list their license number. If they are a fellow employee of yours, a union representative, any of those boxes, they need to go ahead and check the box in section 7. Lastly, they will need to sign and date the certification. Now, the next form we're going to be discussing is the Owner Builder B General Building Construction Project Experience Form. This form only needs to be completed if you're applying for the B General Construction License and you want to receive experience credit for working on projects at your own property. A separate form is required for each project on your property. The experience has to be verifiable through building permits, final inspections, and other documentation. You will need to list the building permit number here on line number 6. On line number 7, you will need to provide the scope of the project. Here, in boxes 8 through 10, you will need to provide more detailed information about the project you performed. Question number 11 asks if other general construction contractors worked on the project and what trades they performed. Remember, this information needs to be as complete and accurate as possible.
With all the information Anna just covered, this is a good time to remind you that we are recording this workshop. We will post a video on our YouTube channel so you can go back and rewatch in case there is anything you missed. Okay, so you've got application submitted. How do you check the status of that application? Here are two resources. First is the secure check. You will need your application fee number and contractor's PIN number to get an update. We will send you that information after we receive, accept, and post your completed application. The second way to check is to look online at our processing times. Each week, we update our website with the date we receive the paperwork for a specific process. So look for the date being worked on and know that the date shown is, if the date shown is after the date we likely received your paperwork, it's likely we are busy working on your application. As you can imagine, CSLB receives hundreds, if not thousands of documents every day, and we process them in the order they're received. So be sure to take extra time getting the application right, so we don't have to send it back to you to correct and then have to start the processing process again. When your application has been accepted, CSLB will send you a notice to appear for examination and a study guide. You should get your exam notice at least 3 weeks prior to your exam day. CSLB test centers are currently open. They were closed from December to February for COVID-19. CSLB has 7 test centers throughout California and encourages candidates to take their exam at the nearest test center.